All right. Hey there, guys. We're getting ready to start on our last 11 days, kind of our home stretch of e-learning for the rest of this school year, and for us, the quarter on Greek mythology. And I'm going to do a version of the Iliad, and I'm going to do my best. I'm not really sure how it's going to work. I really, really love it in general. So I hate to do it this way, but it's better than not doing it at all. So I'm going to share with you guys a couple of documents that I'd like you to look at today. But I thought I really wanted to do a little talk about them as well. So I would look through all the information, but this little video that I'm making for you too will help a little bit to understand. So I realize, at least I hope most of you, when you were freshmen, you probably in your English classes did the Odyssey, okay? And it's the one where it's Odysseus, and he has to make his journey home, and he really has finished the Trojan War, and he is going home to his wife and his now almost 20-year-old, or no, well, at that point he's not 20, but not his baby son anymore, because when he left, his son was just a baby, but they've been gone for more than 10 years. So anyway, he's trying to make his way home, and he has this big long journey. It takes him like 10 years to come home. And this is when he runs into like the Cyclops, and he has all the adventures. And then when he finally gets home, he has to do the challenge with the bow, because he's got the bow that only he can actually shoot and all that. I'm hoping that's ringing a bell with some of you, okay? And Odysseus is one of the heroes that is he's very prevalent in Greek mythology. So he's also in the Iliad. Now, the Iliad and the Odyssey are both attributed to a Greek man, philosopher, whatever, by the name of Homer. And I'm sending you some notes on Homer, but believe me, they're short, because we know almost nothing about Homer. He lived so long ago that there's very little real information. Most of what we have is kind of we're not really sure. It's kind of a legend, kind of a myth of itself. But anyway, we know that they came from him. At least that's who we give the credit for the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the Iliad is different from the Odyssey. And I like the Iliad more. Okay, I used to teach freshman English, so I taught the Odyssey for a long time, and it was never my favorite. It's okay. I felt like it was really fantasy. It had a lot of fantasy because they were fighting against monsters and creatures and things like that. And I just didn't dig that. It's not my genre. Plus, it's all guys, I just didn't love it. But I love the Iliad. The Iliad is a war story, and it's a human story. But it's also really cool because the gods actually play part in it. And I love that. I think that is super fun. So, as far as heroes go, there are different kinds of heroes. I imagine you guys know about your tragic hero. That's most of Shakespearean's tragedies, like Romeo, like Macbeth. I mean, those are tragic heroes. These guys that we're going to be studying are epic heroes, okay? And Odysseus is one of them. He is the epic hero of the Odyssey. Achilles, I'm sure everybody's heard of Achilles. Your Achilles heel is named after him, okay? Achilles is a very famous Greek hero. Hector, okay? And I don't know if Hector will see this, but I have a Hector. This time in class, I was so excited about dealing with that and having him in class too, but don't get to, so I'm pretty bummed. Anyway, these Greek heroes are like bigger than life, really courageous, really well speakers, deeply admired dudes, okay? And in these big epics, the gods hold power over the humans, and they can create, they can destroy, they can jump in, as you'll see, they can do shape-shifting, they can intervene, and they can cause trouble, or they can help. So it's pretty neat how it works out. A lot of this was oral history. This was before there really was an alphabet, and so it was all like told around the campfire. It all kind of came about in an oral tradition, is what it's called. So it's pretty cool. And they did it kind of like rappers did. They would do like they would literally make it up as they went sometimes, and they would add to it as there were new stories to add, and they would have rhythm, and they would do it almost like musical. So it's kind of cool. So some of you have probably heard of Beowulf, okay? Beowulf is the first and the most famous English epic. The Odyssey and the Iliad are definitely the earliest and most famous of the Greek epics, okay? So there are some qualities of epic poetry that make it epic poetry. First of all, it's a very long narrative poem. It's actually told with poetic language, which is cool. It has a very big setting. It's not just set in one tiny small town. Boy, it's set like big all over from here to here. And it's like, again, very expansive over years usually. The main character is usually a hero or someone who's very capable of being one. The action is going to have a lot of extraordinary superhuman deeds. It's going to have a journey usually involved or maybe a really big task. And again, like I already told you, the gods and sometimes other supernatural beings will intervene. They will jump in and they will thwart someone or they might help someone. It just depends on what side you're on. So let me see here. It usually starts kind of in the middle of things, and definitely the Iliad does, and so does the Odyssey. Both of them start in the middle of things. In the Odyssey, when you were a freshman, we actually start that where Odysseus is already like almost home. And he washes up on the shore of an island and he starts telling his tale to this old guy, the king, and he starts telling all of this that happened to him back here. And the Iliad is very similar. The Iliad is going to open up in the 9th year of the Trojan War. So you've already had 9 years of war before it even begins. And it's a very formal kind of thing. And the language of it is, and again, it's very poetic. It has a lot of figurative language, like poetry, as you'll see, okay? All right, now I'm going to go to a different document right now because I'm kind of using these things that I'm going to send you guys so that I can talk a little bit about them. Okay, there's a lot of information you need to know that came before those 9 years, in the 9 years before the Iliad opens up. You may have heard of Helen of Troy. Okay, you may not, okay, but this is your chance to hear of her if you have not. The famous Helen of Troy. Helen is this extraordinarily beautiful, she's supposed to be the most beautiful human woman, okay? And she has many, many suitors, many, many want her, and she finally chooses a very wealthy king by the name of Menelaus, okay, Menelaus. And meanwhile, over here, you've got the Trojan king, and his name is King Priam. And King Priam has many wives, but he and his main queen have many sons together. And one of their sons, their youngest, is named Paris. And Paris is, long story short, he does this beauty contest with some of the goddesses. And the one who wins promises to give him the most beautiful mortal woman. So he starts searching all around the world for her. He finds Helen, decides she's the one. And so he ends up kind of either seducing her or kidnapping her. It kind of depends on which version you read, okay? But anyway, she leaves with him, whether it's forced or not, and he steals her from her husband, who is the king of Sparta. So that causes a huge problem. It actually causes the war, the Trojan War. So it's fought over a woman, of course. We women, we're trouble. We've always been trouble. And her husband, when he discovers that his beautiful wife is gone, what he does is he calls up everybody, all the Greek kings. They've all got this pledge that they've sworn. If anybody needs somebody, they can kind of pretty much just hit this button. So he hits the button, and now everybody kind of has to come to his rescue. And the biggest one that comes to his rescue is his brother. His brother is Agamemnon, and he's his older brother. He's also a king in his own right, and he will become the leader of the Trojan War. Even though he is not the one fighting to get back his own wife, because he's the elder brother and he's very powerful, he will be the leader. So know that the leader of all these Greek forces that all combine and come together, the leader of them is Agamemnon. And it is his brother, Menelaus, who has been wronged and who has had his wife taken. So he's the one with the bone to pick, really. Let's look at it that way. So it's very cool. We have Achilles, okay? And Achilles is supposedly, there's a whole myth behind him. And he was, he's born of a sea nymph who's not normal, not a normal human. And his mother, Thetis, took him to the river Styx and dipped him in and held on to him by the back of his little heel, which would become the Achilles heel. And everything that touched the river would become impenetrable. Like he was invincible everywhere the water touched him, except that one little place where she held him. So he's like supposedly the greatest warrior of all time. And the Greeks need him to come to war in Troy. He doesn't want to come, and he is finally talked into it by Odysseus. He's actually good buddies with Odysseus, and it is Odysseus who talks him into going. So the Iliad, again, it begins in the 9th year of the war, and I have sent you a doc that explains who's on whose side, because it's very important to kind of understand how it works. On the Greeks, you have Agamemnon. He's the leader, the older brother of Menelaus. Menelaus is the guy who lost his wife. Then you have Odysseus, and you also have Achilles. They are all on one side, but let me warn you now that Achilles hates Agamemnon, and Agamemnon hates Achilles. So they're on the same side, but they absolutely loathe and despise and hate each other. So you know that's going to be a problem. On the side of the Trojans, now the war is being fought in Troy. So they're the home team, okay? And they have this beautiful walled city, and all of their homes, all their people, all their women and children and animals, all that stuff is within these Trojan walls, which are very difficult, and they have not been able to penetrate them in the 9 years that this war has been going on. So you have the leader of the Trojan forces, which is actually Paris's older brother, Hector. Now, Paris is kind of like Menelaus in a way because he's the younger, lesser brother. Hector is the older, the badass warrior, killer of men is what he's called. But he's wicked cool. I'm Team Hector. Sorry, I just am. Anyway, you've got basically Hector with his little brother who's a complete wuss, Paris. And you got a guy named Ajax. You got other people, but those are the big ones, to be honest. Those are the big ones. And they're going head to head, but the gods and goddesses have split forces as well. So it's written in your document that you have, but it's probably really important for you to know that Athena fights on the side of the Greeks. Okay? Athena is the goddess of war. She's the goddess of all, like the strategic part of war, the good parts of war. You also have Poseidon. Okay? And he's one of the big three. Now, for the Trojans, I will say straight up, their most important god who fights on their side is Apollo, the sun god. He's wicked, and he does a lot of cool stuff. But they also have Ares. They have the brutal god of war on their side as well. They also have Aphrodite, Artemis. So the gods have chosen sides, and that's the way that it works, okay? There's a lot of the Iliad, and we're not going to be able to do it all in no way, shape, or form. So I'm going to be reading some of it to you simply because I want you to hear some of the language. It's very cool, the way that it's done. The one that I use is kind of an updated version anyway, so I'm going to be giving you some of that. But I'm also going to be doing quite a bit of summary because I simply can't help it. Now, when we're at school, we actually watch the entire movie Troy, okay? The one with Brad Pitt and a whole bunch of big actors in it. It's actually all about the Trojan War. So, hey, we watch it. We actually watch it in segments as we're reading the Iliad, and we do a Venn diagram comparing and contrasting, and it's really cool, and I'm so sorry we can't do that. But I promise that I'm going to bring you some clips from Troy. I will be posting those in our Google Classroom so that you can see how things from the Iliad are portrayed in the movie, and you can see some of the characters and how they do it because it's a landmark movie. It's a really cool, groundbreaking movie anyway. So anyway, we're going to first take a look at these documents, kind of get your mind around it a little bit. And then on Monday, I'm going to be jumping in and we're going to have some videos and I'm going to be doing some summary and I'm going to just try to chop it up and do it over the course of 6 or 7 days. And we will have a couple of assignments that we'll go with. Okay. And then before we're finished, before that last couple of days of e-learning, we will do the 2 big Greek heroes. That's kind of how we'll finish it up with Perseus and with Heracles, aka Hercules. So, all right. Talk to you soon.